does meta matter? And the answer is obviously no. I'm just gonna outright tell you, the moment we have, oh, Mavuika, she's the best pyro DPS, and then we go ahead and we have Arlecchino, she's the second best pyro DPS, still effective, very good, all the shenanigans that, Arlecchino mains want to say, to cope for her being the second best, in the game. And I want to just flash this up on screen. Most effective tactics available is what meta stands for. Now, if it was the most effective tactics for a pyro DPS, you would be running Mavuika. But you don't have to. Therefore, just looking at that purely, we can say meta doesn't matter. There's a lot of other reasons meta doesn't matter. We're going to talk about them. But yeah, it doesn't. And let's go ahead and talk about some other, things that make meta not really matter. Constellations. Constellations make characters a lot stronger comparatively to when, you might first summon for them. So I made a sort of argument with Raiden, right? So Raiden has gotten, I think, like 6 banners, right? Let's say you summoned on half of the banners, 4 or 3 Raidens, and you got her C3, C2, right? Whichever one of those you got her to. Nowadays, if you had done that, you would have a baseline character that existed in 2.0, was pretty good in 2.0, got a little worse in 3.0 where she became an off-fielder and, all that. And then 4.0 rolls around and you get her C2 or something, you're just using a C0 Fontaine character, but you've invested more into a single character you summoned for in the past. So that is where I think we can look at meta again and be like, well, what if you just like summon for an old character for a long period of time? These characters get so broken with their cons, especially newer ones. This is Raiden. She's a 2.0 character. This is when they had Constellations that felt like they did nothing for a character. Like legitimately, oh, look at this. The allies gain 30% attack. Oh man, that's super useful for hyper carry Raiden, Things like that. Like Constellations like that. We don't have Constellations really like that anymore. If we go ahead, look at Kinich. Oh, 100% crit damage. Oh, 30% Dendro res. Oh, E-skill upgrade. Okay. Oh, restores energy. Whatever. That's good for his 6-hit combo. Oh, Q skill. All right, so Q skill does damage. Good. And then, oh, yeah, now he gets better AoE. It bounces between them. 700% damage. Like, if you were to just sit here and you were like, okay, I'm going to save for some Kinich combos, right? Even if this character ages, you can just have him at a C3 level when characters that are matching his C3 are coming out, right? You could just summon for his C3. You can just do that, right? Constellations nowadays, I feel like, are just that good. Like, we look at Navi, he's not necessarily, he's a character I would say doesn't really have the best constellations beyond like his first, constellation being utterly insane. And then you have this constellation, which is pretty nice. Q skill and E skill upgrades aren't really that great because he wants his normals, right? Wait, did they really not? Hold on. They didn't give him the normal level up. Oh no, it is his normals. Okay, I had to check for a second. Yeah, it is his normals. So his normals do get leveled up, and that's going to be a pretty good upgrade for him. One thing, yeah, this one source, like Nevi's constellations are good, but they're not the brokenness that is the, Arlecchino and Varissa, or Varissa's kind of just there at C0. Yeah, but Chloride I know is a pretty good C6 character. So we can all automatically look at that and be like, okay, well, what's the point in that, right? Because even if we look at a character who is very much so conceived as, bad by a lot of the community, she has some of the most broken constellations there is, right? She really, her constellations make her into one of the best characters in the game if you're comparing C6 to C6, right? It like genuinely very strong. But I mean, we also have support characters like this. Oh, a new pyro character come out. Well, do you want 250 elemental mastery, 40% rice shred? Do you want that? Is that to your liking? We don't know if Sealali new pyro characters are going to work with Sealali. They very well could not. But then we also have this, and we also, have the Q skill, or not Q skill, the C6. It could be pretty good. And then we have like Shilon and C2. Like, oh, she's falling off in terms of support. Oh, so let's just get her C2, right? Let's just get her C2. Let's get some interruption resistance. Maybe there'll be a character that this will end up giving them permanent, like full-time interruption resistance. I don't know if there's a character like that right now, but I do know this does give everyone a little bit of interruption resistance. It doesn't make them perfect. I don't think I've ran into anybody who actually gets perfected, like in their interruption resistance gets perfect from Shield and having her C1. But you know, again, Wriothesley, I would say my Wriothesley specifically does feel like, you know, a C0 character nowadays, right? He is C3R1, but then again, like, you could have been saving, right? You could have been saving. And then, yeah, you can get his C6, and his C6 will do insane numbers, right? So, yeah, overall, another reason to, you know, not necessarily care about meta. You could just continuously summon for, like even, again, Wriothesley, a mid character at C0. However, Constellations make the guy so good. So if you just summon on him because you like him in the first place, and then you get Constellations for the guy, you're going to be looking really strong on, like, his reruns and stuff. However, you know, Wriothesley, obviously, we know what happened with his rerun. I think it was like 16 months or something. But you could be looking at a character who you like and you've been able to make effective use out of for a long time due to the upgrade path that they had with them. So it's something to consider when we're talking about, you know, characters, right? And also meta. Let's be honest. There are characters who just, Mavwika, I'll use her as an example real quick. Yes, she's technically meta, but not always. Let's be real here. I doubt that Mavwika is super meta for this guy who definitely hates reaction areas, right? Like, I would assume that, you know, this lava dragon statue man, you know, it's not Mavwika who is like the best DPS for this boss, right? That's another thing, right? It's always different, right? Spiral Abyss refreshes, it's different, right? So we can talk about that. But what about the two teams, right? The two teams is a whole nother thing added to it, right? So, oh wow, we need two teams. Well, you know, I only have the meta Ayaka team, right? You know, I meta Ayaka, woo. But then you have another crowd character, and it's like, oh, I could do Wriothesley. I can do Wriothesley melt. Oh, and it's like, well, you know, Ayaka right now I would consider like the best crowd DPS. You know, if we're looking at C0R1, you know, and then C1 Wriothesley in terms of, you know, free. I'm not gonna get into it, but I'll just say if we were to pick one, Ayaka best crowd DPS right now. You know, we say that, and Wriothesley would not be considered meta because of that. However, Wriothesley has a use because he's on the second half. Do we consider every two DPSs meta? Does that mean we consider like every secondary support a meta support? So do we consider, you know, Seat Lolly a meta support for Ayaka because she's a secondary, like, down? She would be like, you know, after Shinha, you know, Miss Coffee, you know, Fiorina, then maybe Yelan or whatever. Like, would we consider those kind of characters meta because they're an option for the team, right? Do we consider those? Because, I mean, if the first half takes your character, then you're going to have to use the second one. And technically, that's still the most effective team you can make. And don't forget that we're about to have a new event that requires 3 teams. And that's going to give you an entirely new buff set depending on what characters you use. From what it seemed like, I have very little information on the event. We'll see when it comes out, and I'll see how much I like it. But 3 teams basically just amplifies that. And let's not forget that we have Imaginary Theater, right? So, like, guys, does meta matter? No, I can make use out of my Raiden Shogun, right? But if I'm going to recommend people to summon for characters, I'm not going to recommend them to get Raiden Shogun. The usage of this character is low, right? I'm just not, nobody wants to really use this character because every other character is kind of just better, right? Nowadays, they're just better. I just figured I would make this video because I feel like a lot of people assume that I'm automatically like, oh, meta is the only thing that matters, because that is how I talk. But I mean, when I'm talking and saying which character is better, what is, you know, the best team, there is a certain level of, I like my quality of life, right? I'm not going to put Eon-san on this team. 1, because I don't want to use both of my attack buffers on this team. 2, Shieldon is just really good on this team, gets the Night Soul up. There's quality of life like that goes into my opinions on this thing. And overall, I'm not gonna say like, oh, definitively, like, you know, Mavwika's best team is this team, or definitively it's the Eon-san version, right? Just based purely off of damage. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to look at what is the easiest, like, what is the best, like, consistency. 1, you know, like, if I'm using, you know, Fiorina, Shangling, Bennett, Wriothesley team for Melt, it's not always consistent. It isn't, right? Sometimes it can just mess up and you'll lose all your melts. I don't know why it happens, but sometimes it just does that. It's one of the issues I had when I was running Risley originally, and then you can run Burn Melt Risley, and then, you know, you could also run Mavwika now, which makes it super easy to run the character, makes it really easy. You know, you have your cryo character get buffed by Shieldin, right? It's very strong. It's a very strong team. I like it very much in terms of, you know, the overall thing, and I'm gonna say that's Risley's best team. So yeah, overall, that's my thoughts. I don't think meta matters at all. I really don't. I only use it because when I'm recommending people or when I'm saying and comparing characters, you have to, right? Meta is kind of like a thing that'll only matter to people who can't beat the content. It is. And that's kind of where my videos are kind of targeted towards, so we can always beat the content. That is just one thing, right? Because if you assume, you know, meta never matters, I'm always going to beat the content, what happens the day you can't start beating the content? Is your account basically just cooked, right? Because we haven't seen any, you know, characters get buffed after they released, right? Or we have, but one time, bro. I lost my train of thought. Yeah, I just lost it. I don't know what I was saying, but yeah, I'm just gonna end the video here because I've been rambling on for a bit. Yeah, meta, it really doesn't matter. I don't really base my opinions entirely off of meta. I do like to play the game and figure out what is actually the best team, because to me, meta, it matters to a certain extent, right? When, you know, looking at characters and comparing, right? Obviously, I'll, you know, want to like recommend to use the best setup, recommend to use the highest damage setup, right? I would want to do that because that is typically what the most comfortable and best teams are, right? It's why I don't recommend Ian-san Arlecchino, because Ian-san Arlecchino is really a deadly game, honestly, because Ian-san, it's a lot of stamina cost for little gain over what she actually has with like Bennett or something, right? You just would rather use a different sort of setup. So yeah, overall, that's gonna be it for this video. Make sure to subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.